Hello, hello, hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news, and today, bad news about money. And, people, well, you're such a pessimist. Well, I've been a pessimist for a long time. And it is going to make us very rich to be pessimists. And we have a very important guest today. And I shamelessly plug, Rich Dad is putting on an event called in April 6th, 7th, 8th. And I'll give you a view of the whole thing here is that this is the cash flow board game. And when Kim and I designed this game, it was, 1996?
1996.
And we designed this here, and it's called the Rat Race. And this is what happens when you go to school, get a job, save your money, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market in a 401k, IRA, or something like this. These guys, in the next few months, will be toasted. They'll be like a marshmallow over a campfire. So on April 6th, 7th, and 8th, it's about people who want to come out here and not get toasted like a marshmallow. This is the fast track, but sometimes these are called accrediteds and all this. They're more sophisticated, more highly educated investor. So Kim and I do not operate in here. We don't have any stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or ETFs. But we operate out here. So the event on April 6th, 7th, 8th is for people who may be trapped in the rat race, but want to come out here. But that takes financial education you don't get in schools, and you definitely don't get from the stock market or bond market or Wall Street, because Wall Street wants you in here. So does the U.S. government wants you in here. So that's April 6th, 7th, and 8th. Go to our website at Rich Dad, and we're gonna shamelessly promote it today. But our guest today is one of the people that will be at the event. He will be there for 3 days, and if you want to get to know somebody who's in the know, this is my friend Andy Schectman, and he is an incredible person, and you will learn more in 3 days than you will have getting your MBA at some worthless school. Any comments, Kim?
Yeah. So, Andy, it's great to have you back on the show. You're the president and founder of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. And when you were on the show last time, you were talking about BRICS, and so we're going to get an update of what's happened since we had that show. But before we got started, you're telling us about something else that's happening, and now I'm like shaking in my boots going, oh my God, now there's something else coming down that I have to prepare for and get ready for, and it's like it never ends. So you're not necessarily the good news bear, but you are the macro expert.
It is good news if you take action.
What you're doing,
if you just, pretend that you'll be saved by some kind of magical, your college degree is going to save you. I'll pray for you tonight because you're in serious trouble because you're delusional. And Kim knows that I have been this big pessimist ever since she met me because we don't save dollars. We save gold and silver coinage, and we don't keep it in this country. So that's how pessimistic we are. And I say we do everything legally, but we just don't save the dollar. So our guest today is Andy Schectman, I guess, and he will be with us April 6th, 7th, and 8th. And you know that old saying, cheer up, it could get worse. So we cheered up, and the last time we talked, it's gotten worse. But it's good news if you take action. So welcome to the show, Andy.
Welcome, Andy.
I'm so glad to be here, you guys. Thank you for having me. First of all, I want to comment on a couple things, and then we'll get into it. There's a fine line between pessimism and realism, and I think people need to understand that. Yeah. There are phrases and buzzwords that we can call ourselves pessimistic, but are we really just realistic? And that's kind of the curse that I find myself in. I mentioned, I think, when I was on your show before, and if not, let me explain the way that I look at the world. When I started this company, I was 19 years old with my father. And, we come from nothing. Literally, we come from nothing. My father's middle name is Miles, and his best friend, who lent us $60,000 on a wing and a prayer to start a company, his middle name was Franklin, in a one-room office the size of a closet in Minneapolis. And my father said to me, Andy, there'll be one rule and only one rule, or I'm going to fire you. Okay, what's the one rule? I said. He said, you're going to buy something every 2 weeks. gold or silver every 2 weeks, and that's it. I said, well, geez, Dad, if that's the only rule, I'm cool with that. So for most of my career, now, mind you, I've owned the company outright for 2 decades. I've honored my promise to my father. He won't fire me any longer if I don't. But for 34 years this month, we've been in business. I've accumulated something every 2 weeks without fail. I have never missed a 2-week period, and I've never sold an ounce. To me, it's not and hasn't been a hedge against catastrophe like it may be now. To me, it's been wealth accumulation that I hope I never need to use. And if I do, I'm damn glad I have it. Not just for an emergency, as most people look at it, but maybe there's a hell of an opportunity when the dust settles. And if not, I know long after the dollar bills that are in our wallet are hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian as an example of what used to be, that gold and silver will still be immutable wealth. And so first and foremost, 95% of my career, I have looked at gold and silver not as a hedge against catastrophe, but as wealth outside the system. Correct. It's my way of accumulating wealth. And because it takes a modicum of effort to spend your silver or gold, it lends itself into a great vehicle for savings. But I will tell you that over the last couple of years, I look at the world that we live in, and I see things that are happening that I just shake my head at.
Right.
Now, we talked about, before I jumped on, we talked about the FDIC Systemic Resolution Advisory Committee. Now, this is a committee that they're meeting in November. I suggest everyone Google it or go to YouTube and find it. It leaked out. Their meeting was leaked to YouTube. And in it, you have the members of the FDIC saying...
Wait, and what hold, because I want to make sure people know what Miles Franklin does before we go any further.
You have a bad habit of not telling people what we do. We sell precious metals. We've been in business for 34 years. We've done $8 billion in sales without a customer complaint, ever. And we're one of only 24 United States Mint authorized resellers, an honor we're very, very proud of. And we're licensed and bonded in the state of Minnesota. Maybe the only major precious metals company to say that.
Right.
So thank you for reminding me. People call me and say, do you sell gold? Do you know where I can buy it? So, yeah, thanks for reminding me that.
For full disclosure, Kim and I buy gold and silver from you. So just let people know. There's other people we buy from and all this. But I am more impressed with Andy's knowledge. You know, if you buy something, you want to hope the person knows what they're talking about. Unlike real estate agents who have no idea what they're talking about. The price of real estate always goes up. I go, I don't think so. But anyway, Andy, so that you sell gold and silver. Anything else?
We offer storage programs all throughout North America. We have worldwide exclusives with BRICS that right. I believe we have the best storage program in the industry. Not even close. But right. That's our singular focus for the most part, and has been for over 3 decades. And I look at the world a little bit differently now than I have over the last 3 decades, in particular the last 3 years. And when we talk about what is happening, there's so much going on.
Wait, hang on, Andy. So one more thing I want to get into you. One of the things that the Bitcoin or the crypto guys get on about gold, you know, they argue which is gold, which is better, gold or Bitcoin and all that. I think they're worthless arguments. But the issue is storage, you know, and that's the big issue. So if you're going to buy, one gold coin, you don't need to worry about storage. But when you start accumulating, as Andy talks about all these years, it gets to be a problem. You know, you don't just it's like you have a wallet for your Bitcoin, whatever that is, but it's on the web. Whereas with gold and silver, you got to lug that stuff around. So, you know, Miles Franklin is a full service dealer on gold and silver metals, precious metals. So I'm being clear on that. And then that's what you do. Anything else you want to add to that? I'm doing my best to sell your services here.
No, I appreciate that.
I think you're going to sell your services by educating us right now. So
I try, and for me, it's all about the information. It's not correct. It's not what to buy. It's why, and that's what I try to focus on.
And so that's why you're coming to the Rich Dad event April 6th, 7th, 8th. You'll be there for 3 days. And you want to get educated in 3 days, come to April 6th, 7th, 8th, go to the Rich Dad website, and you'll find out more about this program. So, Andy, the thing that we want to talk about right now is you go macro, which I was blown away when I first heard you talking about the BRICS, because I heard about the BRICS about 10 years ago. And you're macro. Man, what's going on? So the BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now Saudi Arabia. And your insights to what's going on macro behind Biden's back is eye-opening. And so that's what I'd like to get in today more than, it's the why you should be right now having gold, silver, and all these things in storage. So what's the BRICS, and why is it so important? And what's happening behind, or as it could be in collusion with the Biden crime family? You never know. But and plus this war in Ukraine. So what is the BRICS, and why are you so concerned about it?
Well, I'm concerned about the BRICS because of what is happening in this country, because of the weaponizing of the dollar, because the decisions that this administration has made. I believe we have pushed the majority of the world, really, outside of the Western influence, the countries in the European Union, the United Kingdom, Canada, the United States, Japan, the rest of the world is coalescing together in a chorus of unity against the West. And
right. What you're saying is they're pissed off and they're not going to put up with the U.S. bullying anymore.
That's right. And I think they look at the West as being hypocritical. And when you weaponize the dollar as the world reserve currency, the way the United States did against Russia, you incentivize countries to find an alternative, wondering if they're going to be next on the chopping board, if they're next that is going to be a country that is viewed as not parallel or aligned to U.S. interests. What does that mean? And how many countries have the U.S. sanctioned along the way and cut off their access to SWIFT? And I think that's having consequences to where we see not only the BRICS, but the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which represents pretty darn close to 60% of human population, 60% of the Eurasian landmass, the Belt Road Initiative, the BRICS, as we mentioned, the Eurasian Economic Union, all of these countries. And if you look, most of the countries involved in these are all part of these same entities. They're rallying together against the West. And they're doing so by accumulating tremendous amount of commodities. And one of the countries that I focus on a lot has been Turkey, as an example. Turkey imported more gold than any country in the world last year, and they have formally applied for BRICS. In January, Turkey imported 58.3 tons of gold from Switzerland. And that is by far the most of any month on records going back to 2012, according to Swiss customs data. So these countries are using commodities like gold as you could call it a vehicle that will allow everyone equal footing at the table, equal say at the table. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do, using, if I had to guess, the success of the 4-year, let's call it beta test of the Chinese digital yuan, which has shown that it's effective and that it works to the tune of over 25 billion in settlements, as the rails to show the immutability and the veracity of what each one of these countries that is joining this growing chorus of countries will pledge to a system that gives them equal say at the table. Right. And a country like Turkey is exactly the one to show that this is exactly what they're all doing.
And Andy, last time you were on the show, you were talking a lot about this, and your real concern, you said one of the biggest milestones coming could be if Saudi Arabia joins BRICS, and to look for that. And I want to say within, what was it, a month or maybe a month, announcement came. Why was that so important?
Well, what gives the dollar its world reserve status is the fact that every country on the planet has had to own dollars since 1994 in order to buy oil. And that was the deal that we struck with the Saudi kingdom and by extension, OPEC. And it's important to note that the Belt Road Initiative, which is the largest infrastructure project in human history, every one of the 13 producing OPEC countries are on the Belt Road. They are all lining up on the same side of the ledger. So when Saudi Arabia, as we've talked about before, first was signed a joint operation agreement with Russia, I was screaming in September of 2021, that's it. Knowing that they would join BRICS, it became very obvious that this would happen. And indeed they did. They have formally applied for BRICS. And if you realize that what has given the dollar this synthetic demand globally is the need to accumulate it to buy oil, if everyone doesn't need to hold dollars anymore because OPEC decides to open up oil production to other currencies, it is a massive, massive deal. And what did Saudi Arabia just tell us in Davos 2-3 weeks ago? We are open to accepting other currencies for oil. So this is a massive deal. Really, it's a massive deal. What it does is it will put a knife right in the heart of the US dollar and its synthetic demand and its hegemony on a global stage. It's a huge, huge, huge deal.
So let me give some dates. But in 1974 the deal was cut that the world would have to buy oil in U.S. dollars.
Correct.
And that's what Andy's talking about is they're all saying right now, adios dollars. And Andy's saying 60% today of the world's population will stop using the U.S. dollar. And that's what gives us power. So those of you who are saving those fake dollars, you're in serious trouble right now. And that's why what Andy says, and Kim will back me up, for all these years, we don't save dollars. We save gold coins and silver coins stored someplace else, because that is the challenge with gold and silver, is the storage. So I want you to understand this. This goes back to what they always say at school: go to school, get a good job, work hard, pay taxes, and save money and invest in the stock market. And that's what we're talking about now. That dollar gave the power to the stock market to go through the roof. And when they talk about the bubble, the 3 times bubble, it's stocks, paper assets, real estate, and the dollar is going to crash. So all you out there, savers out there, I would pay attention right now. Because if you still think you're still believing in the power of the dollar, you're in serious trouble. So that's what Andy's talking about. When we come back, we'll have more. He'll give us more insights into this. But more importantly, it's April 6th, 7th, 8th. If you want to find out what's really going on, and don't waste your time on student loan debt, getting your MBA, you'll learn more in 3 days than you will at the MBA program. We'll be right back.
Robert already warned us, 2023 is going to be the year of lost wealth. After all, Goldman Sachs predicts you'll see 0 returns from stocks for the rest of 2023. And investors like you have already made a record number of emergency hardship withdrawals from their 401ks. Now, a stunning survey reveals that over half the Americans making 6 figures are living paycheck to paycheck. Combined with tens of thousands of layoffs in just the last few weeks, it becomes clear that a financial storm is brewing and nobody is safe. But if you think brilliant investors like Robert are letting their money waste away in a 60-40 portfolio, think again. For years, Robert and other experts have been investing millions into low correlation assets that can still climb when the stock market flatlines. And according to a recent Citibank report, of the major asset classes, the lowest correlation belongs to art. That's right. Contemporary art prices have outpaced the S&P 500's total return over the last 26 years by 131%. Now you can enter this market without needing millions, thanks to Masterworks, our longtime partner. Their platform lets you invest in shares of paintings by icons like Picasso and Banksy. Every single one of Masterworks' exits to date have delivered positive returns to their investors, with the last 3 delivering 10, 13, and 35% net. No wonder over 650,000 users have invested more than $500 million on Masterworks. Offerings have sold out in minutes, but Rich Dad listeners can skip the waitlist by going to masterworks.art/richdad. That's masterworks.art/richdad. See important disclosures at masterworks.com/CD. If you're concerned about high inflation, looming recession, a stock market correction, or out of control spending in Washington, this is an important message to hear. Because the fact is, during every major crisis in U.S. history, many of those who failed to prepare watched their savings, investments, or retirement funds go down, while many with the foresight to own gold helped preserve their purchasing power. Gold even made some folks richer. Now we're facing several major crises at once, and experts say we may soon face even more economic trouble. So please don't wait. Learn the simple way you can diversify with gold and put yourself on the road to financial peace of mind, even in uncertain times. The new free 2023 Gold Guide from our friends at Gold Alliance can show you how. Just visit www.freegoldguide.com/Robert or call 1-800-473-4585. Republican Governor and conservative commentator Mike Huckabee says Gold Alliance is the only gold provider he recommends to his friends and family. Find out why and visit freegoldguide.com/Robert or call now at 1-800-473-4585.
Don't miss your only chance to attend a Robert Kiyosaki event in 2023. This is the first official Rich Dad event hosted in 13 years. Learn exactly what to invest in to grow your wealth and protect it from our socialist government. Learn Robert's top 5 investments that he is doing right now, which are safe from the government's plan to rapidly kill our money. Learn from Robert's actual partners, who are real investors, capitalists, and entrepreneurs. Robert will disclose everything he's doing to prepare you for these uncertain times. Reserve your space for the only live Rich Dad seminar in 2023.
And the event is called Rich Entrepreneur, Poor Entrepreneur. It's here April 6th, 7th, and 8th in Scottsdale, Arizona. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And we have some bad news that could be good news for you. And you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime on iTunes, Android, and whatever you guys listen to it on. But most importantly, our podcasts are archived at richdadradio.com. And if you have friends, family, members, and all this who are still saving money and going to school, get student loan debt, you may want to listen to this program. So our guest today is Andy Schectman. He's a founder of Miles Franklin. Full disclosure, Kim and I acquire gold and silver coinage from Andy, plus storage, and all these things that you need to do to be good at gold and silver. And once again, on April 6th, 7th, 8th this year, 2023, Andy will be there for 3 days. And he'll be accessible to those of you who show up to our Rich Dad event in Phoenix or Scottsdale, Arizona. So, I mean, right now, there is no better person to be talking to than Andy Schectman. Plus, we will have all our other advisors there because, as I showed earlier, you know, this is what school sends you to do. They put you in the rat race. And if you want to get out onto this here, this is the accredited, the more sophisticated investor. That's what April 6th, 7th, and 8th is about. Don't go to school and get a job and invest in the stock market or bond market. You're about to get your butts kicked. Any comments, Kim?
Yes. Well, one thing about Andy, okay, so a lot of people give predictions, you know, that they predict this is going to happen. Andy, I think you're one of the, like Robert, just studies ferociously to see what's going on. And the last time you were on the show, you made a prediction about, pay attention to Saudi Arabia if they join BRICS. Now they've applied to BRICS. So what you're saying is coming true. And before we started this show, you were talking about a meeting that happened in November with the FDIC. And again, there's kind of a prediction coming to pay attention to this because this looks like this is going to happen. So can you...
What is the FDIC, first of all?
Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, I believe is what it stands for. It's the organization that backs all the deposits held at the banks in the United States, to which there's over $9 trillion in deposits being backed by a few $100 billion in assets or in cash by the FDIC. In essence, it's a scam. And they don't have enough money to back the deposits. And people need to understand this. And thanks to the leverage that has been created, this will make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park when these banks fail, because they are also leveraged. They have removed all the reserve requirements ever since the pandemic. And so when you deposit money in the bank, they don't hold it. Heck, right now they would take your deposit. If you notice, even though interest rates have gone up, what you get in the banks is still a fraction of a percent.
Right. So, Andy, what FDIC is concerned about is a run on the bank. In other words, you and me and everybody else runs in there and they say, we want our money back, but there's no money there.
That's right. In fact, if you give them $100,000, they're not going to leave that in there. They'll go buy, 3-month treasuries earning 4% instead of leaving it in the bank as a reserve. They were allowed to relinquish all reserve requirements during the pandemic. And so this has created a problem. The FDIC Systemic Resolution Advisory Committee had a meeting in November that leaked out to YouTube. And the meeting, they basically said, listen, the members of this committee who realize that the public has more faith in the credit of the banking system than we do here in this committee, this is a problem that the public needs to understand, that there will be bail-ins and runs on the bank. The institutions, the banks already know this.
Can you explain what a bail-in is?
So in 2008, when the banks went upside down based upon the poor decisions that they made, the public, the taxpayers, bailed out the banks. The money that was given to them by the government is funded by the taxpayer. That's been made illegal. So they can't be bailed out anymore by us taxpayers. Instead, they get bailed in by the depositors of the bank, who are now considered unsecured creditors, meaning just like they did in Cyprus. In Cyprus, anyone who had over $100,000, that money over $100,000 was given into the bank, like in bankruptcy protection, where the money was used to make the bank whole, and any money left over would be given back out to the depositors, or shares of a defunct bank given back out to the depositors in a pro fashion. In other words,
I want to explain that. Okay, if you have savings in, let's say, Bank of America, and it requires a bail-in, they're going to keep your money and give you these fake assets called shares in Bank of America.
Yes.
In other words, you get hosed. So that's why what we're doing April 6th, 7th, and 8th, if you want to listen to Andy and talk to Andy personally, you're here in Scottsdale, Arizona, April 6th, 7th, 8th, you have an understanding of what they don't teach you at business school. That's probably the most important thing you can understand here. You have access to one of the brightest minds I know, and I think there's nothing more important than your education right now, your financial education that's real. So we have this thing. What happened at that FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, that got leaked? They said, ladies and gentlemen, I think there's going to be a run on our banks. They're going to yank our money out, and that means all you savers out there, you good little boys and girls, you will become owners of the bank. They're going to give you stocks instead of your cash. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. And they say, not only do the institutions know this is coming, that the people need to understand that bailouts are gone and bail-ins are now the order of the day. But they were very succinct in saying, the problem is if we tell the public this, the unintended consequences will incite a run on the banks. And this is a very scary deal. In fact, when I saw it, I really was, for the first time in terms of what we believe to be true, I was very, very, very concerned about my own personal money in the bank. to the point where I've been buying gold and silver every 2 weeks for 34 years. I'm ready to go buy a whole lot more just because I don't want money in the banks, because they're telling us it's coming and the banks know it and the people need to know it, but we really don't want to let them know it because there will be unintended consequences. It will only incite and expedite this run on the banks, which they deem as inevitable. But let's just allow me, if you will, a moment to rant about, I talk a lot about what's happening around the world and globally as it pertains to the coalition of countries joining together against the West. But if you were looking at the West from across the pond, what do you see? You see a country that they just admitted that Social Security is $75.9 trillion underfunded. IOUs, $75.9 trillion. A trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. And that's not counted against the $31 trillion debt. So you're already over 100 trillion there. You got Medicare, Medicaid, and government military pensions, which push us to over $130 trillion. But by their own admission in the 2022 U.S. balance sheet, Robert and Kim, do you know what they tell us is their largest single asset, which represents 38.4% of federal assets? Do either of you know what the largest asset is in the United States?
Maybe.
Kim.
Student loans?
There you go. Most people don't get that. It's a liability against the children in this country, yet they consider it an asset. We are a country, the land of the free, the home of the brave, the world reserve currency, and our biggest asset is debt on our children. The U.S. is depleting and destroying the very resources that has made it so powerful in the first place. Freedom, capitalism, reputation, military strength, and go on and on and on. But it's unbelievable the things that are happening. A country where $5 billion to build a border wall to stop fentanyl from coming in and poisoning our children, which is last I heard, the greatest cause of death amongst teenagers right now in this country is fentanyl poisoning. But $114 billion to the Ukraine is okay. Giving pensions to the Ukrainian government, where we pay $740 billion in interest on the debt last year. We have to borrow money to pay interest on the debt to which we borrowed in the first place. It's absolutely, completely, and totally upside down what's happening in this country. And when you look at the FDIC saying there's going to be run on the bank, well, it's becoming very obvious. We're destroying the value of the dollar, and the world around us understands this. We are borrowing money that we don't have. We're spending it in ways that are just absolutely, completely, totally upside down, while our cities and the crumbling infrastructure around us is making us wonder who's going to come and rescue the bridges and the railways and the roads and the infrastructure in this country that is so in need of repair. And yet instead we borrow money to fight a war that is enriching the military industrial complex, but impoverishing this country. And at the same time, the people around the world understand exactly what we are doing. We are inflating away the dollar, and we are bullying the rest of the world by weaponizing the dollar and saying, if you don't do this, well, you're kicked out of the game. And I think this is why you are seeing what will amount to north of 80% of human population when you put it all together, the 60 plus countries that are already on the docket to join BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Belt Road Initiative, the Eurasian Economic Union. These entities are coalescing, and they are using commodities like gold, the tier one reserve asset, as deemed by the Bank of International Settlements in 2019.
Would you explain that, Andy? What about tier one? Because that was important.
So at the end of World War II, the dollar was anointed the only tier one reserve asset in the world. They said that the dollar, at least as far as central banks are concerned, is a riskless asset. It is tier one. And that's been the only tier one asset, that and U.S. treasuries, since the end of World War II. It would be used for collateral. If the Bank of England is trading with the Swiss National Bank, they wouldn't have used pounds or francs as collateral. They would use dollars or treasuries. Now they're telling us that gold is the only other tier one asset. But they don't really tell us this. You have to dig and dig and dig to find it. You can Google it, it'll pop right up like that. But maybe this explains why the central banks bought more gold in 2022 than in any year since 1967, the second most on record. Maybe this will explain why many of the countries that are applying to BRICS have massive percentages of their reserve assets in gold, like north of 30%, every single one of them, just about. And why countries like Turkey are copiously accumulating it.
What Andy is saying is, before the last few years, they held U.S. bonds, treasuries.
Yes.
And now they're saying, we made a mistake. We better get out of these bonds and into gold and hard assets.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly right. And it's other OPEC producing countries too, and other countries that are moving away from the dollar. The Iraqi central bank, a country we just spent $1 trillion in, right? To help the Iraqis, if that's what you really want to believe. Well, they just announced on Wednesday that for the first time they plan to allow trade from China to be settled in yuan instead of US dollars. That is the beginning of the end of dollar trading in Iraq. You saw the same thing in Iran, where their leader was the first Iranian president in 20 years to visit China. They are all moving away from the West. And you can see this. It's the rallying cry of the hypocrisy and the bullying by the West that gets everyone to the table. But it will be a commodity-backed system. We've already been told that they will use commodities to back a new reserve currency. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization has told us they want to issue a gold-backed settlement currency for the entire Eurasian continent. These are all the same players. And basically what they're saying is that the only way that you give authenticity and validity to a system is to peg it to something that can't be inflated away. As all governments have done, going all the way back to Roman times, they have chosen inflation over austerity. And I think they are now really realizing this. And what better way to use distributed ledger technology to roll out a central bank digital currency than to show the veracity of the whole system by what is being pledged to it by all the member countries. It's not going to be like the European Union, which was a great novel idea, but it didn't work because all the different cultures are moving in different directions, just like it would be with the BRICS. You know, you got, on one hand, you got Iraq and Iran both applying at the same time. You got Iran and Saudi Arabia. These countries don't like each other, but what? My enemy's enemy is my friend. Well, what if we all pledge commodities so we all get equal say at the table, equal footing? The BRICS nations, they rotate their presidency. Not one country has the presidency. It rotates. This year, it's in South Africa. They are a system that will be based upon cooperation, mutual benefit, and a pledging or pegging of commodities, I believe, to a distributed ledger technology to show the world, hey, here it is.
It's distributed ledger, is that blockchain?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so they will use blockchain to show what each country has pledged or pegged to the new system to give it veracity. And I think that's really where the tide will change. People I respect, like Rick Rule, a good friend of mine, said, well, it's hard when you look at the European Union as an example. It didn't work because they were pulling in different directions. I agree. But if you if underneath the whole system you have commodities that each country pledges to the system, it will make it work. It will be the glue that holds it all together, I believe. And the rallying cries against the West, the destruction and the brain-dead monetary policy of the West and the mismanagement of the reserve currency and the weaponizing of it is what's making every country run to the table. But the pledging of commodities, the only other tier one reserve asset in the world next to US dollars in particular, is exactly what they will use to pledge to make the system legitimate. And, you know, people say to me, well, why isn't gold going up if they bought more gold than at any time in the last 55 years? I asked my head trader, because we hedge our exposure to gold, meaning we use COMEX contracts to take the other side of the gold and silver that I have in my warehouse. In other words, if this is 1,000 ounces of gold in my warehouse, and this is 1,000 ounces on paper on COMEX, if I'm holding it here long in my warehouse, I'll sell it short on COMEX. Because if the price of what I'm holding in my warehouse goes down, it goes up commensurate on what I have on COMEX, and vice versa. So my holdings for my business are market neutral. So I asked him, how much money does it take to control a COMEX contract, which is roughly $185,000 worth of gold? It's 100 ounces. He said, all we need to have in our margin account is $7,000. So if I'm a commercial bank or a central bank with $1 billion in my margin account, do you see the perception of reality that I can create? I can suppress the hell out of the price of gold and then scoop it up when no one's looking, because everyone is so focused on the price. It allows the most sophisticated money in the world, the money that's closest to the information. Forget about the size of their wealth. It's bigger than all of our wealth combined, but they're closest to the information and they know what's coming. So they suppress the paper markets and drain the COMEX and the LBMA and all of the ETFs that are being drained by these entities of their physical metal. To the point, like in silver right now on COMEX, there's only 288 million ounces in the entire COMEX universe right now in silver, of which only 31 million of those ounces are backing the bars that are available for delivery. India imported 304 million ounces last year. They are using commodities as the way to de-dollarize, and they are using the Western suppression of these commodities, because what is gold and silver? Everything over the last few years has blown sky high in value, thanks to low interest rates and more money created in the last 4 years than in the history of the country preceding it.
Right.
So what are they doing? Everything gets blown up, but why not gold and silver? Because it is the canary in the mine shaft.
Right.
It exposes the frailty of the system.
Correct.
And our adversaries, even if they are to our face friendly, are using this suppression on the Western markets to drain the system. They are using it against us. It's the ninjutsu move. They are using our leverage against us. And that's exactly what they're doing, allowing them to de-dollarize under the cover of price suppression.
Hey, Andy, we got 3 days, April 6th, 7th, and 8th. And we'll have all of our other speakers there, like Ken McElroy and Tom Wheelwright on taxes and all this. So again, it's the fast track we'd be talking about. Meanwhile, if you're if you're one of the, I don't know what I call you, if you're saving money and investing in your 401k or IRA, I'd call you a loser. And I don't want you to be a loser. So April 6th, 7th, 8th, 3 days with Andy Schectman plus all my other advisors. I mean, it's a bargain. I don't have time. I don't have the money. Well, then you're a loser. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the most critical time in history, and Kim will verify. I've been saying it's been coming for years. We own lots of gold and silver, real, not paper, not SLVs or GLDs, which are ETFs. So we'll have a chance to talk to Andy. Andy, thank you very much for educating our group here. And we'll see you on April 6th, 7th, and 8th here in Scottsdale, Arizona. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy.
I'm so honored and excited to be part of it. I can't wait. And
you're honored. We're honored.
I'll be there with bells on. I can't wait to see you both.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you in April. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for all the work you do and the education you do. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks very much. And we come back, we'll be on the final words with richdad.com here. Hi, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And please understand something. Bad news can be the best news you've ever heard if you'll take action. And I want to thank Andy Schectman for being part of this program. Remember, he'll be one of the many speakers we have there who know what they're talking about, not these financial planners or the PhDs and the Fed and all this stuff. They're the last to know. The most stupid people are the Fed. The second most stupid is Wall Street. And the people that know are the guys on the streets looking at inflation running and all the goofy stuff going on. So it's April 6th, 7th, 8th, and here in Phoenix and Scottsdale, Arizona. Go to Rich Dad's website, and you get to hang out with people like Andy Schectman, Ken McElroy on real estate, Blair Singer on how to sell better and all this. These are my real teachers, and again, they're on the fast track, not in the rat race. where you go to college for. And it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard is go to school and get a job.
And let me just say
makes me
this too,
sick.
because the people that are going to be at this event, people say, "Oh, I've heard them before." Well, not in these times. You haven't heard them in these times. What's happening today?
Good point.
And they're making a lot of changes and doing new strategies and new things to prepare and be ready for what's coming. So I think that's a key point right now.
And the saying
not
I
saying
have,
the same stuff
well,
right now.
it's never really changed from me. So anyway, the saying I have is don't teach pigs to sing. It wastes your time. It annoys the pig. If you're talking to pigs at home, don't teach them to sing because it wastes your time. They still believe in going to school, getting a job, saving money, paying taxes, getting out of debt, and investing in a 401k or an IRA. They're going to be the biggest losers today. I mean, they've already started to lose if you look at the stock market. And they're going to try and curb inflation. But as you know, they're raising interest rates, which is not going to solve it. It's going to make it worse. So if you really want a real education, you can go back to college, get in student loan debt, and wonder what happened to your life because you're still saving money and investing in a 401k. I mean, that's the most stupid thing you can do right now. So anyway, I want to thank Andy Schectman. Go to the Rich Dad. I think we should raise our prices because, no, I'm not kidding you, because we only have a few seats anyway. Why are we wasting our time, trying to teach pigs to sing? I'm tired of it. I mean, how long have I been saying this? I mean, we've been married 35 years.
Long time.
I've been saying, let's not save cash. The reason is I understand what's going on in the macro. The problem is it's getting worse. Once again, in 1973, when I got out of the Marine Corps, that was the year, 1974, they shifted us to a 401k. If you say in the Marine Corps, bend over in the shower and pick up the soap. When they shifted us to the 401k, I went, oh my God, they're going to, everybody at one time. And our colleges and schools and Wall Street and the Fed, they still teach the same crap. When the market crashes, say, oh, buy more stocks. You got to be kidding me. I mean, how stupid can you be? So remember, don't teach pigs to sing. April 6th, 7th, 8th here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Go to the Rich Dad website. I think we will raise our prices. We don't have that many seats. So it's the most important 3 days you'll ever spend in your life, and I'm really tired of teaching pigs to sing. You'd be surprised how many people I talk to. They go, no, you know what you're talking about. But it's happening right now. Any further comments there, Sarah?
Go to richdad.com to get those tickets, as Robert had mentioned. But I just wanted to, my favorite part of the whole show was towards the end. So if you have to rewatch it, go back. He talked about, we're really diving into the savers or losers and what is on the government's balance sheet. And that was the most eye-opening thing. Social Security being $75.9 trillion in debt, Medicare pensions over $130 trillion. And then Kim hit the nail on the head with student loans are the government's largest asset.
So anyway, April 6th, 7th, 8th here in Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, I'm gonna barrack. We'll raise the prices after tomorrow so people have a chance. I mean, we don't have that many seats, and I think this, in my personal opinion, I'm excited about going to it because I learned the most. That's why I put these things on, right, Kim?
Yep. That's where we get our education part of it.
But if you try and, this program is on richdadradio.com. You can show it to your friends. But if they want to argue with you, remember the generalized principle of don't teach pigs to sing. It wastes your time. It annoys the pig. I've talked to so many pigs for most of my life. I've had it. And watch what I've done. Kim, do we have gold and silver?
We have gold and silver.
And we have gold and silver gold mines.
Yes, we do.
So we practice what we teach. So anyway, thank you for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you all for listening to Rich Dad Radio.
Thank
Kim?
you, everybody.